You're gonna tell us what's on the screen.
Well, that's a hard act to follow, but I'll do my best. Basically, I want to give Howie so much credit because he's the only one that's had the guts to really, push this. And I've been talking about this for since 2010 and before. I worked with Professor Seymour Mellon for a very long time, with you. And so my whole attitude has been informed by my studies of manufacturing and infrastructure. And so what we want to do is we want to put some real numbers onto the Green New Deal. You hear about the Green New Deal a lot. Here we go. And there aren't real numbers, there aren't real concrete ideas. So what I've done is I put, with Howie's help, I put together this list of programs, and if all this is done, then we will have a carbon-free economy, and also we will have 23 million new jobs, and we'll be able to fight this global trend of right-wing nationalism and authoritarianism, which unfortunately the left throughout the world has been lacking until now. So,
You want me to click on any links or go to the other page?
maybe you could go to the other page for a minute. We're sort of trying to coordinate this as we are. If you could go up a little bit, yeah, maybe till up to here. So I just want to show you that we've got some real numbers here. We have an interstate renewable electricity system, for instance. Obviously, this name comes from the interstate highway system, which everybody uses. Nobody calls it some kind of socialist horrible experiment. And if they think this is socialist, they shouldn't use the interstate highway system. And what you can see here is that for about $250 billion a year, you get about 2 million people employed, and 500,000 manufacturing. You have a wind farm network spread throughout the country. And what I want to sort of emphasize is that what people also seem to be scared about is the idea that the federal government would take the reins and actually directly create all of these programs. Just like the interstate highway system was managed and designed and built and owned by the federal government for the people, so we would have an interstate renewable electricity system that the government would own. There are some plans coming out, like Jay Inslee and other plans, Beto O'Rourke, and they keep talking about incentives, and they're going to leverage, and they're going to give tax breaks and all this sort of thing. But this is the only plan that really talks about the federal government actually doing it. And that's what happened during the original New Deal. So if you're going to call something a New Deal, you should actually at least do what the original New Deal had done. We're also going to talk about buying out the utilities so that they don't push back, and buying out the oil companies, use the market against part of the market. Then we would have a building energy self-sufficiency program, again, laying out the numbers here. We would put solar panels on every building, and electrical storage, battery storage in every building, geothermal heat pumps, and retrofitting. By the time you get through with this, most buildings would be energy self-sufficient, and they would be part of the interstate renewable electricity system because they would be able to store some of that electricity, give it back, take some of it. It would be a very robust, reliable system. Then we moved to an interstate high-speed rail system, another interstate. And since China can put this together, and Europe can put this together, and Japan can put together an interstate high-speed rail system, certainly the United States of America could put this together. This would also cost about $100 billion, and this would be about 20,000 miles, and it would actually also probably incorporate some of the smaller cities and rural areas back into the United States that the airlines have ignored, and they'd be using the electricity from the interstate renewable electricity system. So you see here that things start to sort of, there's a positive feedback loops. There's mutually reinforcing networks here. Then we moved to the regional reconstruction program, and a very large part, and something that even is ignored sort of in the resolution, is the idea of creating walkable neighborhoods so that people don't have to use automobiles. Because automobiles will be very difficult. I know, sort of like Brooklyn here. You know, you don't have to use a car. We can frame this as creating more choice. Having to use a car is not a choice. Being able to use bikes, walk, transit, cars, that's a choice. So not only that, but it's how we talked about, we need to have affordable housing. So here I'm talking about a huge program of building actually 25 million residential units, mostly in apartment buildings, that would be strewn throughout the country and create walkable neighborhoods, including in cities, most of which shut down at night. And in order to help that along, we want our regional transit systems, create whole new New York City-sized transit systems. But for people who are still and what we would hopefully do here is get at least a quarter of the population into walkable neighborhoods. But for the people who are still in suburbs, we want to move toward an electric car fleet. And to do that, we would provide subsidies so that people could buy an electric car for cheaper than for a gas car. That way they would want something like that. It wouldn't be like, oh, the government's trying to not let us do what we want, but would actually be more attractive. Then there's transportation infrastructure, water infrastructure. These are things that the American Society of Civil Engineers says we need, and of course they keep talking about infrastructure. Every time there's infrastructure, you sort of get scared that something horrible is going to happen. This is the real infrastructure. The Civilian Conservation Corps that Howie mentioned, that was one of the most popular programs in the New Deal, and I'm assigning 4 million people to do this because we need to, as he said, plant billions of trees and restore ecosystems so they can draw down the carbon, and also just simply restore ecosystems. And then, if you want to go up, there's a federal program. In order to do this, as Howie said, we're going to need to reskill the American public because it's the human capital that we're going to have a problem with. But also, I think people might be excited by an interstate high-speed internet system, which wouldn't be too expensive to build actually, and would at least get us to catch up with Korea, which has a much faster system than we have. And then we could have universal childcare and pre-K. And then finally, we need to have a production system where you can have sustainable economic growth. That is, economic growth that doesn't destroy the ecosystems. And to do that, we need, as I said, regenerative agriculture. We need to completely revamp the whole manufacturing system. And I want to point out that all of these things that we're producing will will revive the whole manufacturing sector of the economy. And by reviving the manufacturing sector of the economy, you can revive the entire economy. You can revive, most importantly, the middle class and the working class. So I think this should be very popular throughout the country, rural areas and the Midwest, and communities of color, which were hit first by deindustrialization. So we're going to try and replace all the machinery within factories so that they don't pollute, they don't create carbon emissions, and so that they create products that can be reused and recycled so that we don't have to do mining, which is destroying the planet. Even if climate change wasn't going to destroy the planet, pollution and mining would. So, and then at the very end, the Global Green New Deal, which I probably need more, but we need to coordinate with the various developed countries to implement this. So this all comes down to $2 trillion, which is 10% of the economy, almost 6 million manufacturing jobs, almost 23 million jobs, and then 2 million of those go to the fossil fuel industry employees who would not have a job anymore if all of this happened. That would be part of the just transition. $2 trillion sounds like a lot of money. It's way more than people are talking about per year. I think that people would respond positively to an actual concrete plan, and we know we have the money to do it. So this is a very fast tour of magical mystery tour of our Green New Deal plan.
You wanna show them what's underneath, you know, what
Oh.
we're putting behind it?
Oh, sure.
Pick one.
Yeah, you can go to these, and we're gonna put this up, I think, on
You
Howie's
wanna do
site.
some?
Sure, so we can look at that. Well, so I have a lot of verbiage here, and I explain how I get the cost. This is the cost part of it. We could go back to there. Let's see, maybe if you go back to plan here. We could look at the wind farm network also. That'll show you. Well, we can look at the jobs, the calculations, if you're into that sort of thing. Brian and I will try and, make this more concrete with some fancier economics in the days ahead. Also, I guess we could look at the tax reform part, so if you go back to the plan and go all the way down, the tax reform link. Here.
I can't see my.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, so here, as I was talking about, you know, we have the money to fund this sort of thing, and, you know, the corporate welfare is up to $500 billion a year. Financial transactions tax would yield $150 billion a year. Any Henry George fans here, the land value tax, he was one of Brooklyn's proudest thinkers. A progressive personal income tax reform, we get $300 billion. Throw another $250 billion at the corporate, because the corporations used to fund almost 1/3 of the whole federal budget. Now they fund like 9% or something like that. A corporate assets tax, that would be for worker co-ops. A lot of these new factories could be worker co-ops. And a progressive wealth tax. This is something actually we're stealing, I think, from Elizabeth Warren, who put together a very nice wealth tax, and Bernie Sanders put together a nice estate tax. So all this together, we could get $1.7 trillion plus. We could double Social Security mostly by lifting the Social Security payroll tax. So I think all these numbers come together, and they're all rather, this isn't really complicated, I don't think. I presented this to a couple of colleges in California recently, and they were fine with it. This isn't some, Jay Inslee again put out some 38-page thing with all kinds of stuff that only a master's in public administration would love. And I don't see it, but you know, they'd have to ask experts what they think. No, people couldn't directly look at this, and I think that an advantage of this is that people can look at it and they can understand for it. It's comprehensive and comprehensible. That's the way I like to look at it. So I think that gives you